1960, Psycho, directed by Alfred Hitchcock. It's a timeless horror classic and revolutionary for the time, but did you know that there was a remake in 1998 starring Vince Vaughn, the guy from Fred Claus? Yeah, you probably didn't know, and boy do I envy you because I wish I can go back to the time when I didn't know.
Old habits die hard.
Anyway, full spoilers for Psycho. Let's talk about why this remake does not work. Like all successful horror movies, Psycho was due for the usual horrible modern remake, only this time, director Gus Van Sant did the unthinkable, something nobody had the balls to do. He literally just remade Psycho. Oh yeah, Chris, obviously it's a Psycho remake. No, I mean, he literally remade Psycho. Shot for shot, frame for frame, line for line, outfit for outfit, milk pitcher for milk pitcher? I can name maybe a few changes that he makes, and some are good, but most are bad. One of which includes an unnecessary masturbation scene. Yeah, we're gonna talk about that later. It's unfathomable to me that the whole idea behind this was to literally just redo Psycho, but with a worse cast and in color. That's really it. And on paper, it's not a horrible idea, I guess, because the movie isn't bad, but it isn't bad because it's just a movie that already exists and is good. And it's only good because somebody else already did the work for you. Anybody can just copy your work and call it a movie. But to me, this does not feel like a movie. I don't know what this is, because who is this even for? If you got your friends together to watch a scary flick and somebody suggests Psycho, but then like John blurts out, hey, let's watch the one where the dude from Dodgeball plays Norman Bates. Remove him from your home and block him on everything, because that's not a human being. That's a robot that was paid by Universal to try to convince people that this movie is good, because it should go without saying that everybody hated this. In a word, disappointing. In two words, disappointing and pointless. A fun watch that doesn't take itself so seriously, and how can you go wrong with Vince Vaughn? You can go incredibly wrong with Vince Vaughn. I like to think that this woman has never heard of the original Psycho and this is her first exposure to it, because I think that's probably how I'd react to this movie if this was the only version I'd seen of it, because it's kind of a silly movie. Whoa, okay, slow down. Yeah, Psycho's great, but it's also great for a 60-plus-year-old movie.
Sure. Yeah.
It was the first movie to really turn murder into a thrilling and acceptable form of entertainment. Alfred Hitchcock had to fight hard to get around a lot of censorship in the movie. The reason the now iconic shower scene looks the way it does was because of the studio's unwillingness to show nudity as well as graphic violence. That's why you only see Janet Leigh from very limited angles, having her more delicate bits shrouded by blurring it or literally removing it from the frame. That's why you also never see the knife actually penetrate her body. As Steve Dollar puts it in a History.com article about the scene, much of the scene was shot in extreme close-ups with swift edits so that the nudity and violence are implied, felt, but never actually seen. So Gus Van Sant said, "F all that, make sure her titties and ass are out the whole time." I've obviously blurred this here, but they are not very flattering towards actress Anne Heche. For example, in the scene where Norman Bates first finds Marion after the murder, instead of showing this haunting angle of just the very edge of Marion's body with her limp arm creeping out from the side of the doorway, they show like her entire right half, and it takes away some of the sense of horror. The fact that we don't see her true injuries leaves a lot to the imagination. What I find most interesting is that now that by this point we're 38 years removed from the original, they didn't have to conceal the nudity at all, as we can clearly see. But they also didn't need to conceal the violence. Referencing the quote from before again, the quick cuts were used to create a sense of chaos and not allowing the viewers to really see what was going on. They also utilized shots in reverse, and it is important to remember that at the time, viewers couldn't pause or rewind. So what you see is what you see in the moment, and for audiences that weren't used to such violence on screen, it was likely pretty overwhelming. I always felt that this moment specifically was really funny, where the knife obviously barely touches her and it just kind of moves in front of Marion's body. So I'm saying all this to make the point that Sant kept this the same, but not the nudity. This scene looks the way it does because of the censorship at the time. It doesn't really look good. This was the one thing that he really had the opportunity to improve upon. It's probably what needed it the most. There's not a cut mark on her. There's not a bit of blood on her, there's just blood in the bath. And having the knife actually stab her would probably remove some of the same feel as the original. I get that, and I agree with that, but I still think it looks cheesy and it looks like a B movie. So with that all in mind, it's just baffling to me that Sant recreated this exact shot with the knife grazing her. I'm gonna be using that word a lot, baffling, because I have no other way to describe it. It's just so confusing to me that he has no problem changing the exact framing of other shots throughout the movie. But this moment, one of the most dated looking shots in the entire film, he keeps exactly the same. On top of all of what I just said, from the moment that the shower curtain is pulled back to the moment the killer leaves, in the original, that takes about 23 seconds versus about 35 in the remake. In the original, it's just like whack, boom, dead. In the remake, there's a bunch of inserted shots of the clouds. Why? I say again, baffling. And these random cuts to uncorrelated things are something that happens in the second on-screen kill, which, boy, we have to talk about. There's no doubt that this moment from the film is probably the most dated looking. In this scene, Detective Arbogast goes looking for Norman Bates' mother and is killed and apparently levitates down the stairs. Yeah, it's a silly scene. Real quick, I'm just gonna let you watch the scene from the original and then watch the scene from the remake, because I think it truly speaks for itself. When I saw this, all I could think to myself was,
alright, dude. What the flip?
Truly baffling. Just actually the funniest thing I think I've ever seen. Let's run through everything about this scene because I could make a whole video about this moment alone. 1. I would just love to hear the reasoning as to why they chose to do CGI slices in his face. How did you manage to make it look worse than the version from 1960 with just a little chocolate syrup splatter on his face? 2, why do they cut to this random naked woman? I truly don't understand this. And then they cut to like a goat on a road. What is happening? 3, this scene is again dragged out for no reason. The shock is removed entirely because there's a second cut on his face added and these random cutaways, and then he falls, right? And also, why is Arbogast wearing this silly ass outfit from the original if the movie takes place in the 90s? And yes, that's true. Despite the plot being the exact same, this movie takes place at what was at the time modern times, which raises a whole host of other questions with the existence of cell phones in a movie where somebody goes missing, but we'll save that for another time. Hopefully never, actually. So yeah, this scene feels almost like it's intentionally trying to ruin the original. Any shock that the original created is completely sucked out of this one. It's the same story as the first murder. Rather than a quick and horrifying kill, it's just bloated and stripped of any real tension. And we know that Alfred Hitchcock is the master of suspense, yet somehow, despite recreating this film, shot for a fucking shot, it has none. Now why is that? 3 words. Vince fucking Vaughn. I don't feel as though I need to say much here, but I will. Vince Vaughn is one of the most insane casting choices that they have ever made, and probably the worst casting I've seen in a movie ever, and it's not like the budget was an issue. This was a cast with some names, but look at movies that came out around this time with the same budget in some of their castings. So yeah, somebody truly felt like this was the best option, and it was not. Straight out the gate, I'm just gonna say, this acting, dog shit.
Did anyone meet her here? Did she arrive with anyone?
Nope.
Did she make any phone calls or, locally? Would you spend the night with her?
No.
Well, then how do you know she didn't make any phone calls?
Well, we,
Just truly bad dog Baffling. It's just baffling, okay? I can't say it enough. Baffling decisions. In the original, Norman Bates comes off like a pretty strange and timid man. He's not really a threat at first. He's just a weird little guy, right? So how did they choose to emulate this in the remake? Well, every time Norman gets like nervous, I guess, Vince does this weird little laugh, and it's so forced and so strange, and it's really annoying.
Yeah.
My life a YouTube poop.
Shut up.
And I'm not sure if this was like a director's choice or an acting tick on the part of Vaughn, but either way, I hate it. There are certain points where he does it more than like 5 times in one conversation.
Private investigator.
Like, I'm sorry, this movie just cannot be real. There is no way he did that laugh every take and the director was just like, perfect. That is exactly how I wanted that scene to go. Vince was just not selling it for me here. But who was gonna tell me this dude was 6'5"? Jesus. Dude was playing Bates. He should have been playing for Golden State. Now, there's a lot that I can rip into this film for. I already have, but there's a lot more. I could talk about Bates's horrible blonde wig, or the fact that they speak to a telephone operator in the remake, despite the fact that it's almost the 21st century.
Lauren, the sheriff wants you to connect him with the Bates Motel.
Or I could talk about the weird way Norman Bates walks up the stairs in both versions. Because seriously, why is he moving like that? But no, I need to address the most glaring issue, and that is that Gus Van Sant is horny as f***. I mentioned a masturbation scene before, and that was not a joke. Sant felt that this scene of Norman looking through the peephole just wasn't creepy enough. No, he had an idea. He'd make sure that Marion got, first of all, completely naked on screen. Now that we don't have those pesky censorships, right? And then Norman Bates pulls his pants down and, well, you can just watch. Somebody please make it make sense to me. What did this add? Who did this benefit? And he does this multiple times. So many instances of random extra nudity and sexual content. Like in the opening scene where Sam and Marion are in a hotel room. Sam is butt-ass naked and we get this shot of his ass.
Have you ever had a dream that
Or in the shower scene, like I mentioned, and the random flash of that woman we mentioned. There's also later on where Julianne Moore's character finds a porno magazine in Bates' house. And I ask again, why? Why is a word I found myself asking a lot throughout the course of watching this movie. Was it for money? I mean, it bombed at the box office. This movie was, I guess, just made for people who are scared of watching movies in black and white, so they felt that they needed to make it in color, because it's just the same movie, but worse. So I ask you guys now to answer the question of why. Why do studios consistently feel the need to recreate horror movies to minimal box office success and poor audience reception? That's the question for the day. Thank you all for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe. Keep watching.